In the Democratic Republic of Congo, where M23 rebels continue to advance as the international community presses for a ceasefire. A joint summit of the East African Community and the Southern African Development Community has appointed former leaders of Kenya, Nigeria, and Ethiopia to lead peace talks. Meanwhile, 200 soldiers deployed to the DRC mission, mostly ill or injured, left Goma, the capital of North Kivu province, on Monday. The rest of the contingents, drawn from South Africa, Malawi, and Tanzania, remain in Goma despite M23 rebels calling for foreign troops to leave the city. The DRC, the UN, and other countries have accused Rwanda of supporting the M23 fighters, accusations which Kigali has consistently denied. The EU on Monday suspended its defense pact with Rwanda, while the UK said it will soon impose sanctions on the country. Meanwhile, an international criminal court prosecutor is in Kinshasa to meet with authorities over alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity committed in Ituri, North Kivu, and South Kivu provinces since the early 2000s. Well, let's go deeper into what's going on in the DRC. Joining us live, we have our correspondent Chris Ochemringa in Kinshasa. Chris, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us here on Africa Live. Chris, the ICC prosecutor is there. Tell us more about his visit and what's expected to come out of it.
Yeah, so Richard, the visit of Mr. Karim Khan is part of his efforts on carrying out an investigation into human rights violations that were committed in the DRC, especially between 2022 and 2023 during this conflict of the M23 rebels. And, 2 years ago, the DRC government filed a case at the ICC against the M23 rebels and the Rwandan Defense Forces, accusing them of committing a lot of atrocities, the killing of civilians in eastern DRC, North Kivu province, UN peacekeepers, and the systematic pillaging of the DRC's natural resources. They say that some of these these offenses amount to crimes, war crimes and crimes against humanity, which falls within the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court. So they want the ICC prosecutor to investigate and find justice for the victims. But, Rwanda has, like you mentioned, consistently denied, involvement in this conflict, despite a number of reports from UN experts saying that they have troops in eastern DRC fighting alongside the M23 rebels. What we know is that Rwanda is not a signatory to the Rome Statute, which established the ICC, and so it's very unlikely that they will cooperate with the court in case any of the officers are found guilty, found to be involved, because President Paul Kagame has repeatedly been criticizing the court, saying it only targets African countries, and so we are very unlikely to see any cooperation between Rwanda and the ICC. Richard?
All right, Chris, I'd like you to stand by. We have some more questions for you. Meanwhile, let's bring Ethan Tashobia into this conversation. Ethan, if you can hear me, Ethan, the EU and the UK are promising sanctions on Rwanda over accusations of backing the rebels' takeover in the DRC. What's the reaction in Rwanda, and how could such sanctions impact the country?
Richard, what we've heard from the government of Rwanda regarding the possible sanctions that have already been announced that are in pipeline to be put on Rwanda. Rwanda says that actually the Foreign Affairs Minister mentioned that if sanctions were the solution to the long-standing crisis in eastern DRC, this issue would have ended probably 30 years ago. They're saying that imposing sanctions on certain countries and certain sectors of the community would not bring a lasting solution to the conflict, but also will not also address some of the underlying causes of the conflict. And for Rwanda in particular, they're saying that if any discussion that includes sanction does not involve the neutralization of the FDR, this is an armed militia with remnants of those who are responsible for the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. If that is not part of the discussions on the equation to bring about peace in Eastern DRC, there's nothing that is going to be addressed in a long term. So Rwanda is saying sanctions will not help address the situation, but rather looking into all other grievances that are presented either by Rwanda, the government of Rwanda, the M23 themselves, who claim to be persecuted by their own government, who also claim that their rights are also not being respected as Congolese citizens, but also DRC, which continues to accuse Rwanda of siding and supporting M23 rebels in this this conflict that is ongoing in Eastern DRC. Richard.
All right, Ethan, important points that you've brought to our attention. Let's bring Chris Ochemringa back into this discussion. Chris, we've heard what Ethan has had to say. Chris, in the conflict zones, we have reports that M23 have ordered all foreign soldiers to leave Goma. Which foreign forces is it referring to, and what's the response so far?
Well, they were specifically referring to soldiers from South Africa, Tanzania, and Malawi. These are troops who are they came to the DRC about 2 years ago under the Southern African Development Community. This is a regional bloc of 16 nations that have a security pact that if any of their member states is attacked, then they come in and help. So they were really referring to them, and also the Burundian army, which has, the Burundian government signed a bilateral agreement with the DRC to help them fight against M23 rebels. And last month, when M23 rebels captured the city of Goma, they said that the continued presence of these foreign troops is not justified. They have to leave because they have liberated the area and they're going to ensure that there's peace in that area. We also have, in Eastern DRC, UN peacekeepers in that area, but we haven't heard them mention the UN peacekeepers. But there's also the government in the DRC has dismissed this statement by the M23 calling on these troops to leave. They're saying this is an illegitimate group. It's a terrorist organization that has no right to tell these forces from friendly countries that have been formally invited to help the government to stop these attacks to leave the country. So the government is saying they're the only ones who have the right to tell the foreign troops to leave the country.